In this video, we will look at the two most important things to make a garden as productive as possible: managing fertility and water. Today, instead of telling you what to do, I'll show you what I do and what we've set up in our new garden. Let's take a behind-the-scenes tour of our strong garden. When I arrived, my first question was how to make this beautiful soil fertile so it could give its best. Some farmers say there's no bad soil, only bad gardeners. So how can I become a good gardener? There's something I've discovered since I started working in agriculture. No matter what kind of soil you have, or almost, there are two important things that work. These two things: on one hand, it's having rich soil. Organic matter, because this organic matter will help the soil stay structured and will allow the life in the soil to be well established and, above all, well nourished. Okay, so organic matter. And on the other hand, to have soil that stays relatively moist or well watered, so that the life in the soil doesn't dry out and remains as active as possible. Don't you have a slightly bigger hair? What's up with you today? Is it your mum's or what? No, but it's you always telling me do this, do that, bring me this, bring me that, and never, you don't even mention me in the credits or anything. It's lucky whether I mention you in the video or not, but what are you talking about? It's just editing. We're the same person, right? Are you going to say I don't exist? I've heard it all, but you're handling this video alone. Well, listen, I'll try to manage on my own. Alright, so I'm going to try on my own to show you what I did to focus on these 2 points, organic matter and water, and we'll start with organic matter. I've tried quite a few methods to create or restart a growing area, but today I have to admit that I have my own method and I almost always do it the same way. Basically, it's first going to be a pass with a cultivator, a roller, to aerate the soil and restart the activity of the microbes. If the area was grassy, I remove the grass, set it aside and put it back later. Then once the area is well aerated and cleaned, I put compost on top. I'll either sow green manure, plant crops directly, or mulch. Mulching is less common. Usually I sow green manure or plant directly. So the method might differ if I prep my area in the fall for planting later in spring. In that case, what I can do is use the roller, or maybe not even that, and just put on a thick cover with shredded green waste. And even if there's grass underneath, all of that will work quietly throughout the winter. And in the spring, all you'll have to do is plant or sow directly into it, possibly even in the fall. If the green waste is well decomposed, you can try sowing a green manure crop directly. And that way, it works even better throughout the winter. Basically, those are the only methods I'm going to use. Besides that, the other thing I'll do is make sure my paths are always covered as well. That there's never any weed growth anywhere, especially in the middle of my vegetable garden areas and therefore in my paths. I usually use straw or something similar, but since we're just starting out and have limited materials, straw works well. So, as you've seen, for my different methods, whatever the case, I need to have organic matter, compost, shredded material, green waste and straw. And be aware, I really do have these needs. Because this is a brand new project, it's just getting started and I want it to take off very quickly. Eventually we'll be able to produce all these materials ourselves on site. And I could have completely compensated by doing that, but it would have taken longer to get started. Since I want to move quickly, I need these materials. So now we're going to go behind the scenes to see how we always have these materials on hand. Available? Okay, you stay here. Okay, and here I'm talking to you about behind the scenes, but if you've already been here at La Pépinière, you must have noticed that it's behind the scenes, but it's not hidden at all. Actually, all the different materials we store, we made lockers with pallets to make it more practical. Eventually, it's not finished at all, it's going to look even nicer soon. The goal is to make it more practical for truck deliveries or when we arrive by vehicle. The system will evolve to become even more practical. On the path side, that's where we drop off the materials. And on the garden side, these areas should be accessible from the other side so that from the garden we can come and pick things up. Compost, green waste, everything we need. On one side we drop it off, on the other side we pick it up, and that way it's really as practical as possible. As for the different materials we have compost, shredded green waste and shredded wood. Pruners and green space workers with shredded materials need a place to drop them off. When they're nearby, we tell them to bring them here. And that way we get these materials for free when they're too woody or too resinous. We don't use it on the growing areas, but we still add it to the pathways since it's organic matter and always useful. We collect manure from someone who raises horses and brings it to us. For them it's waste, but for us it's gold. So there you go, all along the entrance, all these materials we might need. In the back, I don't know if you can see, there are bales of straw. That's what we buy from a local farmer for the poultry, for the backyard, and also to mulch the paths. And sometimes the growing areas in the garden. There you go, I think that's about all we have for now. That being said, I'm ready to take any kind of organic matter, any kind of manure, any material that could be useful for the garden. Well, I'm not too picky as long as it's not too contaminated with chemicals or anything and it's local. Well, I'll take it. All right, that's it for today. For fertility, I would say that in other cases, there's nothing more to add to give the soil a chance to be fertile. That being said, fertility doesn't stop there. And for you to understand how it works, I'll try to use an analogy that might make things a bit clearer. You could say that if a soil is rich in organic matter and well aerated, it's like an engine. And if on top of that it's a clay or silt soil, you could say it's a big engine that could be very powerful. And to run this engine you need fuel, and the fuel, you could say it's another type of organic matter that's greener, fresher and more moist. To be a bit more precise, you could say that the soil rich in clay or silt and rich in woody organic matter, that will give you something structured, airy and especially full of bacteria. Now that's all well and good, but to create fertility, that's not enough. In fact, plants don't feed directly on organic matter or soil life. Plants feed on the waste products of soil life and especially those of bacteria. So for this to work, you'll need a soil that's rich in woody organic matter, structured, airy and full of bacteria. But on top of that, these bacteria will need to be fully fed with fresh, moist organic matter. So they can eat, live, reproduce and poop as much as possible, allowing plants to use the droppings to grow fully. So for that, we'll need fresh organic matter available all year round so we can mulch the growing areas and feed the soil. We'll cover that in detail in the next video. Also, moisture ensures bacteria have an optimal environment to reproduce. And that's what we're going to look at now. Before talking about watering, the first thing to think about is mainly to keep the soil moist. We'll try to make sure it dries out as little as possible. That's why my soil is often mulched, the growing areas are sometimes mulched, the paths are always mulched, there's straw everywhere. Sometimes it's impractical because paths can be mistaken for cultivated areas, but the main goal is to keep the soil covered. The goal is to always keep the soil covered with plants. That's why our beds are either growing crops or when not remain covered. Well, we sow a green manure or some kind of plant cover there so that it's always covered with vegetation, and sometimes we even do both. There are crops and under the crops there's mulch, like here. I've also noticed that counterintuitively more crops together create more layers of plants stacked on each other. The less thirsty they'll be and the less they'll need watering. I don't know if this applies in every case, in every context, but in any case, that's what I've noticed here. The areas with the most vegetation are the ones that suffered the least from the drought this summer. And yet it was very dry, so there you go. The denser it is, the less thirsty it gets. Well, that being said, we said that would be the next video for the plants there. Now, so we're going to look at the irrigation system and how we manage our water in the garden. Before I joined the project, Carol already had her watering system, which consisted of tanks like this one that she filled with water from the well. An electric pump in the well, a generator that runs the pump to fill the tanks, and then the tanks. There was just a valve to open so that it would go into microporous pipes that work at low pressure. And each tank was calculated for a certain cultivation area. All of that is done. Carol explains her system in detail in a video. I'll link it in the top right if you want to watch. Today, the project has evolved a bit and we've had, let's say, two major revolutions in the project. First revolution. Today we have electricity, we've installed solar panels and a power station, and thanks to this power station it's much more convenient to get water from the well. We still have the electric sump pump at the bottom of the well, except that now all we have to do is plug in a socket or press a button to get water coming out of the end of the hose. And I have to admit that's really convenient. The other big change is that until now we were limited by the amount of water the well could provide, and in the summer it sometimes ran dry. Well, now that we have a water meter, we can use water from the main supply as a last resort when there's no more water in the well, which means we're never out of water and we can start other crops without worrying too much about whether we'll have water or not. Well, that being said, this year, despite the heat wave and the drought, the well has almost always given us enough water, so that's great. Well, I'll try to show you in a bit more detail how it's organized if it's not clear enough. Our nursery is open every Saturday afternoon from 3 post meridium to 6 post meridium, and most of the time we organize small tours of the place, so come and enjoy it. In the workshop we have our EcoFlow station charged to 100 from the station with a cable running to the well and powering the sump pump. It doesn't go directly, it goes through the greenhouse. There we have a power strip with a button, so we just press that button. And then we have the water coming out of the hose. So the pump sends water through a hose that goes right to the greenhouse, and then from the greenhouse the hose can send water pretty much anywhere in the garden. So one important thing that seems pretty logical to me, but I'd rather say it, is that in the well the pump that's there is a sump pump, and you see it's those pumps with a float switch. The float switch ensures the pump runs only when there's water in the well. When water is gone, the float drops and stops the pump, preventing it from running dry. We'll see that for various reasons it's practical. So how do we apply this to the well pipe? We're going to fill the tanks, well, the cisterns we have in the garden and the tanks we have at the base of almost every cistern, at the base of each cistern. And we're going to use those tanks to fill our watering cans to water at planting time, everything we're going to put in the ground. And then for quite a few crops, that's enough. And when it's not enough, sometimes we take the watering cans again and water by hand. When it comes to watering, I'd say that's how we usually do it most of the time. Then for crops that need a bit more water, sometimes we still set up drip irrigation. You should know that today we no longer use the microporous hoses that work at low pressure with these tanks. We may occasionally use them on some crops, but I find classic drip irrigation systems with higher pressure more precise and practical. But now that we have electricity to run the pump in the well, we can use that from time to time. Just so you know, we set up these drip systems, but we don't necessarily use them very often. They're there just in case. In the summer, we have a period that's too hot and too dry, which requires watering. During a period when the well doesn't provide enough water and we really have to save as much water as possible, what we'll do most often is either, as I mentioned, use watering cans by hand or use a sprinkler, as I explained in the previous video where I quickly showed you the plants. The organization of the crops, Carol has arranged her growing areas into beds that are side by side, forming squares. And these squares are, I would say, exactly the area that a sprinkler is able to water. Depending on how you set it, sometimes the sprinkler can cover a wider area than the square, so you put the sprinkler in the middle, turn on the watering, and it will soak the whole area. I usually organize myself in the evening before going home, but sometimes I do it in the morning instead. Doing it in the evening, you'll see why. In the evening before going home, I put the sprinkler in the middle of an area and turn on the electric station, and there you go, it starts the pump and waters. And then it will stop after a while. Either it will stop because the well is dry, it doesn't have a huge capacity, but it refills pretty quickly. So either it will stop when it's dry. That's why it's important to have a sump pump that stops as soon as there's no more water in the well, or it will stop when there's no more electricity in the electric station. We didn't get the largest models due to our electric capacity. I don't know much about electricity, but we don't have the biggest batteries. And since the well pump uses quite a bit of electricity, after a while it's going to stop. So whether it stops because the well is empty or because the battery is dead, once it's stopped, it's stopped. The next morning, as soon as it's daylight, the power station starts recharging again, and usually the well has had all night to refill. That's why I prefer doing it in the evening. It's convenient, especially since we don't have to do it often. Each plot, each growing area, we water them at most every 15 days. I'd say every 10 days if it's really needed, but usually every 15 days if there hasn't been any rain. Not every plot, just the ones needing extra water, mainly the vegetable plots, only needed watering 3 or 4 times all summer. That's really the way I prefer to water, because it doesn't just water the plants we're growing, it really soaks the whole area, so it's ideal for the life in the soil. If we run low on water, we'll switch to drip irrigation, but as long as there's enough rain, we flood all areas. That's it for fertility and irrigation. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time we'll talk about organizing the growing areas, planting, and different plant combinations. If you have questions, leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. That really makes me happy. If you want to support me, go through the Typee platform and subscribe. A big thank you to those who do or will do it, without whom I wouldn't be able to take the time to do all this. So really a big thank you to you. And then I'll see you very soon for the next video. All right, bye everyone.